Before the flood event, we provide information to our residents. So residents can log on to the internet, and for their house, they can find out what's the land level on their house and what are the likely flood levels for their house. And I'll show that to you shortly. It's called a B Floodwise property report, and it predicts the 100-year flood levels. We also use our city plan, which is our plan of the whole city that says, in this zone you can have houses, in this zone you can have industry. And if you build in these zones, what are the levels that you need to build to so that you are above the 1 in 100-year flood level. So although a lot of the city is already built up, the new areas that are being built have to build to a reasonable level. We provide maps, and I heard that the mayor has asked for those maps to be released tomorrow for Kaohsiung. We are in the same situation. We are putting maps out to the community. They can go onto the internet and have a look at a map to see where their house is and where the likely flood levels are. They can do that at whatever time suits them. For a long time, that information was not available, but now we put it on a map and can be easily seen by the citizens so they know their flood risk. For a long time, people were worried that if that information was available, it might devalue their house. So their house was worth less. But in fact, what we found is it's really important information for everybody to know what the flood risk is at their house. People can also subscribe to what we call an SMS service. So we send a message to their mobile phone saying there's a lot of rainfall or flooding happening. So please, if you live in these particular areas, go back to your house and start moving your belongings. This is some of the information we provide to our citizens. It's an example of a booklet which they can take home and read and tells them about how to be prepared for flooding. You can see here some examples where this is step number 1. Understand your flood risk. In other words, are you likely to be flooded in a major event? Step 2. Prepare your home. Make sure you don't store things down on the floor. Store your equipment up high so that way when the flood comes, it doesn't affect you as badly. Step 3 is when the flooding happens, then here's what you need to do. You need to get all your important information. You need to get your photo albums. You need to get your children. You need to get all those important items to take it out of your house, because if the flood comes, then all of those household goods will be ruined. So it's just a few suggestions on what they can do to minimize the impact on themselves. Here's our website, which provides information to our citizens. You can see here it talks about during an emergency. Here are some things that you need to do, because the city government can't be going out to every house and help people. There's too many people. So here's some tips for them to be able to help themselves. Here's an example of the information that citizens can download off the internet for their house. So what this is showing is that this is the 100-year flood level. So that's the level that the 100-year event would be likely to come to. This is showing the lowest land level on their house or on their property, and this is the highest land level on their property. So what this is saying is that if you want to build a new house, you have to build above the 100-year flood level. And the reason we present this graphically as an image is we used to present it as numbers. So this is one level, 1 meter, this is another level 2 meters, this is another level 3 meters, but it's very confusing for people. Whereas by presenting it as a diagram, they can understand this is their land level, and this is the level the water is likely to come to. So we consulted with the community and said, what's the type of information you need? And this is the type of information that they asked for. During flood events, we provide predictions on what the likely flood levels are. So anybody can phone in to our call centre and say, I live at this address, what's the likely flood level at my address? Now luckily most people are not affected. This is for river flooding, because many people live on hills, for example. But those people who are affected can phone in, or during the flood event they can even go onto the internet and find out what the predictions are for the flood levels. And once again it was providing information to the community to empower them to be able to get the information to know what the likely levels are, so if they need to, they can move out of their house. Two of my very close friends, their house was flooded during this flood event. And they phoned me up to say, because I was working in the disaster management area, in the disaster management centre, and they phoned me up to say, is our house going to be flooded? And I was able to provide them with information to say, yes, actually your house could be flooded over the top of the roof. So they have a two-storey house, and the water was going to go over the roof of their house. And because of that information, they were able to get all of their furniture, all of their cars out of their house in 6 hours. So they moved it all out. And that way, although their house went underwater, all of their furniture was saved. They lived with us for 2 weeks during that flood event. And they've now have repaired their house and just moved back into their house last week. We also coordinate with other agencies, for example, electricity, water supply, police, emergency services, the army. So during an event, all of those different agencies have different roles to play to help our community. We also have to protect our own assets, to make sure our roads, to make sure our bridges, our water supply, our sewerage is not affected, or if it is affected by the flood, the impacts are minimised. So during the flood event, the Lord Mayor was interviewed on television, on radio, in newspapers. We also had our Brisbane City Council website. There were so many people trying to go onto the website that at one stage it crashed. And so what we did was we took down most of the information on the website, just the usual information we have up there, and it only had information about flooding. That way, the most important information was there during the flood event, and that really worked very well, having only the flood information available during the flood. We had thousands of phone calls every day to our call centre of people ringing up to ask, will I be affected by flooding, or the flooding has come, I need to report that my house is flooded. And I've already mentioned our Facebook and Twitter. Our Brisbane City Council staff and councillors went into the field to help residents to be able to minimise the impact of flooding on them. Although this is very hard to read, I just wanted to make sure that I shared with you, this is the organisational structure that we have during a flood event. So you can see that different people have different roles. Some might be about logistics, others might be about information, others might be about planning. And all of those then feed up into one coordinator who then informs the Lord Mayor and the councillors. So there's very clear lines of communication about who does what. Otherwise, it can be very confusing. So we found that during flood events, it's very important for people to understand what each of their roles are. This was our disaster coordination centre. So I was in this coordination centre for nearly 1 week. So we worked very long hours. And this is about half of the coordination centre, and this is another room. And you can see we had people there from disaster management. We had Brisbane City Council people, we had the police, we had the army, we had a whole range, electricity providers, the water supply people, all in the one room so they can communicate together. What we also found was it's very important to have maps. You can see here the maps on the walls, so people can go and point to where the flooding is. It's really important to have technology like computers, but sometimes it might fail. Having a map showing where the flooding is occurring or likely to occur is very powerful. Also the Lord Mayor and the councillors, if they're interviewed on television, can use that and point to it. So printed maps which are pre-prepared, so in other words, if we think the water level is going to be this high, we print off a map. If we think the water level is going to be that high, we print off a map. And that way we're able to use those to inform people about what the likely levels are during the flood event. These are the levels in the river during the flood event. So you can see there's high tide and low tide. That's the tidal variation. Now, the reason I put this slide here is that it's very hard to predict where it's going to go, how high the water is going to go. And that's where the engineers have a complex job to do with the modelling and their experience. Because it might just look like an ordinary event, but once the flooding happens, this is what happened. You can see even with the tide, they're still going up and down. But the hard thing to do is to predict how high will that peak go. What's the level here? So 2 days previously, there we go. 2 days previously, this is all the information we had. Then what we had to do is predict how high it would go. And it changed about every 6 hours as more information came through about the rainfall that was happening in the catchment. But the engineers did a fantastic job in being able to predict those levels. This is another representation of those flood levels. You can see it rose very quickly, very steeply, and then afterwards also fell quite steeply. So that's over the period of about 5 days. This is the flooding of the city. So you can see that this is what we predicted would happen during the flood event. And also you can see on there some lines, some red lines. So they're the roads that are impacted by the flooding. We have pre-prepared maps which show which areas are likely to become isolated. So in other words, where they become an island, so we can move those people out before the flood event. So the more prediction that we can do beforehand, we have a better idea which areas are likely to be flooded, and that way we can move people out and also move the army and move the state emergency services in to help people. These are some photos during the flood event. That's the city of Brisbane on the day of the flood, just after the peak of the flood. It had a very high silt load. In other words, a lot of soil came down with the flood event. And our harbour, we would normally dredge about 300,000 cubic metres per year. We now have to dredge 3 million cubic metres. In other words, 10 times as much has come down because of all the soil in the water. This is the bikeway. I normally ride on that bikeway, very wet. This is, it's in fact just straight opposite my office. It's just near this. But our office was dry, luckily. This is some flooding during the river, during the flood event. And you can see here that there's flooding all through this area here. And this is our football stadium where we play football, and even that was flooded during the event. Piggio. This is our beer factory. Luckily the beer factory didn't get flooded. And of course McDonald's did get flooded. This is some flooding during the event. And you can see even the high-rise buildings, there was flooding all around those high-rise buildings. Because they were built for a 100-year event, and this was much greater than a 100-year event. I'll show you now some before and after photos. So here's one area of the city called Yeronga, and that's before and this is after. My friend's house that I was telling you about that were flooded lived just here. So their house went right underwater.